I better choose my words carefully. Oh, for myself, I would definitely prefer Python. And if you're really into technology, this is the platform for you. I mean, it is.
I met Frank some time ago, and I immediately realized he's kind of a cool guy. So I hope everyone will enjoy this little chat. Hello, Frank, and thanks for joining me.
Hi, Krasimir. Yeah, and of course, likewise, it's cool to be here. So yeah, I'm also very happy.
Let's do some real stuff. Tell me a little bit about your background and what's your current job in IBM and who is the older, I mean, the mainframe or yourself?
Oh, that letter is a little bit tricky, but the mainframe is older. My name is Frank van der Wal. I am based in the Netherlands, but in the current role, I'm covering what we in IBM called a market, and that market reaches from the northern and central Eastern European part of Europe. So basically from Iceland all the way to Kazakhstan and everything that is in between there. I call myself ZTO with the Z and not with the C, but with the Z. Basically, that's a role that doesn't exist. That gives me a bit of the freedom to work with organizations who are running a mainframe to see how we best can integrate a platform into a hybrid cloud world.
You become kind of a celebrity on social networks over the past 6-12 months. I've seen you've done a lot of codathons across the Europes on a number of universities. Can you tell me why are you doing those hackathons?
First, perhaps it's good to explain why you call it a codathon and why IBM calls it a codathon, because of the rest of the world it's called a hackathon. But for some reason, I think American lawyers, etc., dictated that we should not call it an hackathon, because in a hackathon there's really a prize and a race of who is the furthest to find the flag and all that kind of stuff. That's not what we are doing here. So it's really what you perfectly said. It's a codathon. So I created a couple of sessions that people can come in, work on a real mainframe. It's an IBM owned mainframe. It's called Z Explore, which is the learning platform that IBM put out there, and can actually play a full whatever day, half day, couple of hours on the mainframe. And the reason why we created this is that, as I said, I'm not a mainframer by heart. So I sometimes also find it difficult to say, okay, what does it take to create a Hello World application in COBOL without asking people how does that work? And so that was the whole idea. I think it was for Share in 22. It was also in the Corona period that we were asked or to say, okay, can we do something for young people? And then we sat down and we created a couple of challenges, basically how a mainframe works. And we started with Python. You already mentioned Python, but not everybody is aware that you can run Python in ZOS as a real application in ZOS. And Python, of course, gives the possibility to do all kinds of things like a web server, building a web server, but also has a lot of APIs available. So we created a hackathon that people start creating a Python application, but that connects them to a Kix application running on the same system. And they can list things and order things and have to work with data sets. And in the end, they can order something. And if all goes well, there's an IoT device flashing in all kind of LED lights, etc., only to make sure that it's just another platform. And the whole idea was that people coming to a mainframe event and doing a mainframe, but have no experience in working on a mainframe, at the end of the day say, Joe, I just developed some Python and I work with Kix. I don't know exactly what it is, but I work with it by means of REST APIs and I plow through some data sets. And you could see that basically for younger people or new to the platform people, it didn't make any difference because we didn't use 3270. We didn't use all kind of green screens. They just get Visual Studio Code. They SSH into the environment and they start developing for cloud and deployed everywhere. That's basically the whole idea. And we deployed it in this case in ZOS. And that kind of took off. And so we have now a couple of more of those challenges available as low hanging fruit for people who want to learn about the mainframe.
Do you think that this general attitude from young people about mainframe has changed recently?
And suddenly the Python world opened up. And there's also a tool called the Z Open Automation utility, ZOAU. You cannot pronounce it normally, but ZOAU is a tool that from the command line in the Unix world, you can create a data set with very easy commands that everybody who has worked on a Linux, on a Unix system can relate to those commands. So in a Linux environment, if you would like to create a file, you type in touch. With that ZOAU utility that runs in the Unix system services, you can now do detouch and you create a data set. You don't need to go to the panels and to know all about different data set types, etc. But you can now do it from a command line, and there's a man pages for that. So suddenly for me, it makes it so much more easy for people who doesn't know the mainframe to work with the mainframe. And that has really changed over the last couple of years. And that's what the best thing I can hear after a day of Codathon, that people just shrugged and say, well, I just worked on a computer.
Yeah, the funny thing is we have 3 young guys in mainframe department in Cross. They joined over the last 6-12 months. And obviously, when they started working with mainframe stuff, they are more on the development side. So they said, I want to work with the VS Code. And then we said, okay, fine, no problem whatsoever. You choose the tool that you feel comfortable with. And the other tools, those explorers and those graphical tools. But over the time, little by little, they start to use all those legacy tools. But because in many cases, you can do the things much more efficiently and quickly with that approach. Nowadays, after some 12, 18 months, I would say they are working in a hybrid mode. They're both using the old way and the new way. And first, when they initially started, they say, I don't want to touch DSO. Please no. I mean, whatever. What do you think? Is this the future? I mean, this hybrid mode, or are we gonna end up one way or another?
I feel like exactly like those people. And whenever I do presentations and I say, well, Visual Studio Code and Python is the way forward, I try to provoke a little bit the audience, especially if it's a typical mainframe audience, and they all start shifting uneasy on the chair because, well, they love their tools. What I also like to express, especially with that Z Open automation utility and the Python things, for the first time, as far as I can recall, we gave the organization now the opportunity to choose. There's nobody in his right mind say that the 3270 interface and SPSF, etc., is going to go away. That's definitely not the idea. And I've seen people that always wins hands down with the speediness and the time they took to work on the system. A 3270 will always win. It's fast, it's responsive, it's to the point, and people develop their macros. ISPF is an extremely powerful editor, much more powerful than I think VS Code is, but you have to know them, all the macros and all the shortcuts, etc., etc. It is really a choice now. We offer a couple of choices, and that is for the first time ever, because before ZOAU and Python, it was ISPF and SDSF and JAS and all what you have. I also go back and forth to 3270 every now and again, and it's also funny to see that when we first started with Z-Explore, but back in the day, it was called Master the Mainframe, which was a kind of a contest. All young people to do a contest on who got the first jobs done on the mainframe. It was only 3270, and later we kind of moved that to Visual Studio Code as the interface. And then we shut down the 3270 at one point in time. And the only complaint we got was from the students, say, "Oh, where's the cool interface?" They missed the 3270. To your point of your young people in Cross, for me, going the way into the mainframe with tools that Visual Studio Code and Python, etc., will makes it easier to go into the system. But yeah, everybody needs to know JES, and everybody needs to know a little bit of Rex and know how the panels are working. But for me to learn it, because you then need to know or want to know how things are working in real life with a JES or with JShell, etc., is for me, it's an easier way than what you typically see, that you start at the screen, you don't have any clue which kind of button to press. And then if you're unlucky and your cursor is on some place where it shouldn't be, then you are stuck because there's that little red man standing there and you don't know what an attention key is, etc. It is hard, and I don't think it should be hard to start with. But once you have gone onto the system and feel a little bit comfortable, of course you use it 30 to 70 every now and again. I also use that as well. But my first go-to system, if I want to play around, if I want to compile something, if I want to do a bit of a demoing, my first go is always VS Code and Python.
I heard some comments from experienced mainframers who said, I don't like this hybrid tooling approach because it's going to create a mess. So if I have a bunch of scripts in Rex and then another pile in Python, and then one guy is over to vacation and a guy from other camp needs to change something in script for whatever reason, we have a problem. So they don't feel comfortable of having multiple tool sets and not multiple scripting languages. Or what's your take on this?
I guess that's true, and that's down to organization. What I've seen over the last couple of years in the distributed world, it was all source control, source code management stuff like GitHub, etc., etc. There you don't have that problem too much because it's in a central place. And if John is on vacation, still Sue can pick up the code and et cetera, et cetera. In many mainframe organizations, that is a strange thing. You don't put your JCL and your Rexes in a Git environment. Probably you would like to keep it in your own dataset environment, or you share it, but there's not so much of documentation, and there's little version control, etc. And one of the first sessions I did, that must be 8 years ago, with a bank, I won't call them, we introduced to the COBOL developers the whole idea of a GitHub, and that people can look in each other code and clone it and merge it. And they were terrified. They were saying, like, oh no, you mean that somebody else is going to look at my COBOL code? That is not going to happen. So, yeah, but that's the way forward. But it was clearly beyond their idea of how that should be. And I would very much claim that once you have done, even of course you can have JCLs in a Git repository and your Rexes in a Git repository, but that you need to change, and you need to make sure that won't get a mess. But that's more an organizational thing as anything else. I also like the idea, if you start using Python as your scripting language to do things that you could also do in JShell and etc. Everybody who worked with Python has probably had this whole idea of a Git repository or a source control management environment, so much more than the typical Rex and JShell people. That I think a good thing. But it's also a thing like PyLint, for example. That's a tool that can walk through your code and give you a score from 0 to 10 to see how good your code is, which kind of forces an organization into the rules for Python that you use, for example, simple things like snake cases rather than other things, etc. I think there's also tools that now helps at least to enforce or guide developers into a common set of rules, rather than everybody who's created their own Rexes and JSLs over the past years did it on their own way without any real recommendation on how code should look like. So we might abandon them in a bit of a messy situation if we do the transition. But I think in the end, it will definitely benefit if it's one or the other. And I think Python will be the way forward.
And now I'm being a devil's advocate and repeating some of the comments I heard from the season of the mainframers. Some of them told me, yeah, those tools are very nice and you can play with them. But in most of the cases, when you really want to dig deeper, then you still need those traditional tools. Obviously, when you have something which has developed over the long period of time and has a lot of features, and you can customize it to the latest bits and bytes, and then you have something which developed over the last couple of years, usually you don't have the same level of proficiency. But do you think that this is ultimately going to converge?
First of all, I think that there's an enormous amount of things you can do today with the Python scripts and the stuff that we have there. And I always challenge the organizations that I'm talking to, can you come up with a JSL that we cannot convert into a Python script?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much that it is a useful exercise to change everything that you have now in JSL into Python. Why would you? But yeah, for some things it might be interesting, or get an intern from a high school or a university for a summer period to plow through a couple of your JSLs and to see if you can do that. But I don't see any limitations in doing it. So from a JCL Rex point of view, I don't think there are any limitations. If you're looking at Ansible, how an enormous amount of collections, as we call it, are now available, that if you would like to do something in Kix, deploy a new version of an application in Kix, you don't need the Kix Explorer anymore. You can completely do that from an Ansible playbook. So I'm a bit confused to say, well, you still need to do a lot of things, and you still need to have other tools if you really would like to do it all the way. It might be, but the ones that I've seen with Kix and IMS, and also a lot of ZOS, like Jobs, you don't need anything else. But I might miss out on a couple of those things, because I'm pretty sure that your colleagues are perfectly safe and sound, that they say, well, you need then automation, for example. What I see happening is that, for example, Ansible can do up to so much. It is an automation tool. So anything you do on the platform twice, you might say, oh, can't we make a playbook out of that so that it can be repeatable? I would not position Ansible, for example, as the only tool to do a DevOps pipeline, because we have other tools there that do more the orchestration. But when it then comes down to deploying stuff in Kix or IMS or do compilation, etc., I think you need other tools than that. But in the end, it needs to be deployed, and then Ansible can nicely fit in. But it's not that Ansible can cover everything in a pipeline. That's not how it is developed.
You just mentioned this just another platform. And I heard many times some people say this is then kind of an ultimate goal for all this modernization effort on Mainframe platform, is that Mainframe should become just another platform. Would you agree this is the ultimate goal?
Yes, for me it would. And then, of course, just another platform with its specifications. For many years, I think IBM, but also other people say that you should run the workload on the platforms that are most suitable to run that workload. And clearly, if it's a graphical user interface, that should not run on the platform. That's silly. But if you see your high transactional, valuable, high available transaction, etc., yeah, it makes sense to run it on the platform. And what I always found difficult, and even within IBM, I would say, well, I'm now working on the mainframe. People start rolling with their eyes. Oh my goodness, Guy, what happened to your career? What happened to you? Because it is still seen as, oh, that's old and that's terrible. Whereas I again, in my introduction, I said I'm now 10 years or so working on the platform. I never ever worked so long on one piece of technology, because it keeps on giving. It's such an interesting platform. And if people get the burden away that you need special tooling, that you need special knowledge, that it tastes different, it smells different, and all that kind of stuff, if that has been taken away, then I think everybody will realize it's a damn good platform, and it would be lovely to have young people understand that as well, and also organization understand that as well. So no, it's just another platform. We have our cloud stuff where we do that. We have a mid-tier where we do that, and we have a mainframe where we do that. And by the way, that mainframe is still 80% of our business runs there.
I mean, it definitely resonates well with the whole idea of Mighty Mainframe, because when I started the Mighty Mainframe, what I felt is something like that. I want to tap this isolation of mainframe community, because some mainframers are so happy to be, I mean, some people ignore mainframe because they think it's old and it doesn't deserve too much attention, while some mainframers enjoy this isolated position, because then they are pretty much on their own and they can do whatever they want. And I don't think this is a good approach in the mid-run. This idea of mainframe being just another platform sounds like a good idea for me. But I participated on one of those discussions, and one of the colleagues put this addition. He said, just another platform, but the best one. And I kind of like it, because if it's just another platform, then it's probably dead of the mainframe as we know it today, right?
Christian, it's perhaps a bit silly for me to say, but I mean, it is the best platform for what it is designed for. I mean, the transactions and the securability of the platform, it is, well, unparalleled. For me, it's the best platform to run that kind of workload. But it's a worse platform if you would like to, I don't know, graphic design. I mean, that's a terrible platform. It doesn't support anything of the graphic design. The best platform ever, yes, but then with, as a subtitle of to do the things that the platform is good is, and transactional, security, high scalability, and all that kind of things. But there are many workloads that doesn't require that, and then it would be a terrible platform because it might be too expensive or too slow. I would very much like to position it as the best platform for transactional workload. I'm always amazed, and I'm not a developer by heart, but if I do a little bit of developing, and you see the output, it is so rich. And in the beginning, you think, my goodness, that's a lot of crap that I get thrown at me. But if you really want to know what's happening on the system gives you the answers. It takes time to find it out. If you're really into technology, this is the platform for you. I mean, it is so abundance of information, which I haven't seen on any other systems. If you just compile something and it runs, and it doesn't run well, try to find it out, and you can debug some things. But the amount of information the mainframe gives you is unparalleled. Yeah.